Admiral Kovacs stood on the bridge of the Drachnid Empire's flagship, the Eternal Dominance, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he watched the blue-green planet rotating slowly on the main view screen. Earth, as its inhabitants called it, looked peaceful from up here. Like all the other worlds they had encountered over the centuries, it would soon join the Empire without a single shot being fired. "All ships in position, Admiral," reported Commander Zix, her metallic scales gleaming under the bridge lights. "The surrender protocol can begin." Kovacs nodded, following the procedure that had worked flawlessly for over 3,000 years. The Drachnid Empire had perfected the art of bloodless conquest, thanks to the universal surrender signal. It wasn't magic or advanced technology, just a simple truth accepted by all civilized species in the galaxy. When faced with overwhelming force, surrender was the only logical choice. "Begin transmission of the U.S., Kovacs ordered, his voice carrying the boredom of someone who had performed this task countless times before. The massive fleet surrounding Earth, 500 warships strong, activated their signal broadcasters in perfect synchronization. The U.S. was more than just a message. It was a carefully crafted combination of mathematical proofs, biological imperatives, and psychological triggers that had been refined over millennia. Every known species in the galaxy was hardwired to recognize it as the ultimate expression of superior force. According to the Intergalactic Council's records, no civilization had ever resisted for more than 6 minutes after receiving the signal. Commander Zix monitored the readings from her station, signal reaching all major population centers. "Admiral, their primitive communications networks are carrying it perfectly." She paused, checking another reading. "Their military installations are receiving it as well." Kovacs allowed himself a small smile. The humans' technology level was classified as Development Stage 3, capable of basic space travel but confined to their own solar system. They had only recently discovered faster-than-light communications, which made them eligible for integration into the wider galactic community. "Time since transmission began?" Kovacs asked, following the standard checklist. 4 minutes, 12 seconds, Zix replied. Kovacs nodded. Most species surrendered between the 4 and 5 minute mark. He had already prepared his acceptance speech, the same one he had delivered to countless other worlds. The words were practically embedded in his memory. "Welcome to the enlightened civilization of the Intergalactic Council. 5 minutes, 30 seconds, Zix announced, a slight note of confusion in her voice. Kovacs frowned. This was unusual, but not unprecedented. Some species took the full 6 minutes to process the signal. 6 minutes, Zix reported. No surrender response detected. Kovacs straightened his posture. Check the signal strength. Ensure there are no transmission errors. Signal is at full strength, Admiral. All systems functioning perfectly. Zix's fingers danced across her console. Wait, detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface. Kovacs rushed to her station, his scales bristling with disbelief. The display showed thousands of small craft rising from hidden locations across the planet's surface. They were military vessels, but unlike anything in the Council's database. Impossible, Kovacs whispered. Run a diagnostic on the U.S. transmitters. They must be malfunctioning. All systems are operating within normal parameters, another officer reported. They're simply not surrendering. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the human vessels formed up into attack formations. This had never happened before. It wasn't supposed to be possible. Every species in known space understood that resistance against a superior force was futile. Admiral, Zix's voice was barely a whisper. They're powering up weapons. Kovacs stared at the approaching human fleet, his mind struggling to process this fundamental violation of universal constants. In all his years of service, he had never actually needed to fight. The Drachnid Empire's weapons were ceremonial, their combat training theoretical. They had never needed anything more. Until now. Send an emergency message to the Council, Kovacs ordered, his voice shaking slightly. Inform them that we have encountered a species that... He paused, struggling to find the right words. That doesn't follow the standard protocol. As the human ships approached, Kovacs realized that everything he knew about civilized warfare was about to change. The universe had just become a much more complicated place. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force sat in her small but agile starship, the Swift Response, watching her tactical display light up with thousands of similar vessels emerging from hidden bases around the globe. The strange signal from the alien fleet had been analyzed, decoded, and dismissed within minutes by Earth's combined military command. All ships reporting ready, Captain. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant James Rodriguez, announced from his station. Operation Mosaic is go. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. For 15 years, Earth had prepared for this moment. Since first detecting faster-than-light communications and realizing they weren't alone in the universe, humanity had worked together in secret, building a defense force unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Remember your training, everyone. Small ships, small targets. The Earth fleet split into hundreds of smaller groups, each following carefully planned trajectories. Unlike the massive alien vessels that hung in precise, orderly formations, the human ships moved like a swarm of dancing fireflies, their patterns seemingly random but perfectly coordinated. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Kovacs watched in growing confusion as his sensor officers tried to make sense of the human tactics. They're not following any known combat doctrine, Commander Zix reported, her scales shifting to a pale green of uncertainty. Their movements make no logical sense according to the Council's military database. The human vessels darted through the gaps in the Drachnid formation, their smaller size allowing them to maneuver in ways the larger alien ships couldn't match. Each Earth ship was barely the size of a Drachnid vessel's escape pod, making them incredibly difficult to track. How are they coordinating? Kovacs demanded, watching as the human fleet executed complex maneuvers that should have been impossible without centuries of unified space combat experience. Back on the Swift Response, Sarah received updates from the Global Command Network. The Earth's internet, something the aliens had dismissed as primitive technology, was proving to be their greatest advantage. Real-time tactical data flowed between ships, allowing the entire human fleet to act as one fluid organism. They're trying to target our command ships, Lieutenant Rodriguez observed, watching the alien fleet's movements. They think we have the same hierarchy they do. Sarah nodded. That's why Operation Mosaic was designed the way it is. Every ship is independent but connected. There's no single point of failure. The Drachnid fleet's formation began to show signs of strain. Their ships, arranged in traditional attack patterns passed down through generations, couldn't adapt to the humans' unconventional approach. Each time they tried to encircle a group of Earth vessels, the smaller ships would split apart and flow around the aliens like water around rocks. Admiral. Zix's voice was filled with disbelief as she reported to Kovacs. The humans are sending us messages in thousands of different languages and formats. Our translation systems are overwhelmed. Kovacs gripped his command rail tighter. The humans weren't just refusing to surrender. They were actively working to confuse and disorient his fleet. Their ships transmitted everything from military demands to cooking recipes, from mathematical equations to popular music. How can they be so disorganized yet coordinated? He wondered aloud. Sarah and her crew continued their careful dance through space, their small ship part of the greater whole. Earth's strategy was simple but effective. Demonstrate that humanity couldn't be defeated by traditional means. Phase 1 complete, Rodriguez announced. The alien fleet's formation is compromised. They can't maintain their encirclement pattern. Begin Phase 2, Sarah ordered. Let's show them what else we can do. As the Earth fleet initiated their next set of maneuvers, a message was broadcast to every alien vessel, this time in a single, clear transmission. The people of Earth thank the Drachnid Empire for this opportunity to demonstrate our capabilities. We look forward to discussing terms for peaceful cooperation. As equals. In the Council's records, it would be noted that this was the first time in galactic history that a surrender protocol had not only failed, but had been answered with an invitation to diplomacy. Humanity, it seemed, didn't just break the rules. They rewrote them. High Counselor Xentera of the Intergalactic Council stood before the massive holographic display in the Grand Chamber, her crystalline form reflecting the concerned faces of thousands of representatives from across the galaxy. The news from Earth had spread faster than a quantum transmission, and now every species wanted answers. "Let me understand this correctly," said Representative Molo, his gelatinous form bubbling with agitation. "These humans not only ignored the surrender protocol, but are actually pushing back against the Drachnid fleet." Xentera's crystal segments shifted in what her species considered a nod. The latest reports confirm this. The Drachnid Empire has requested reinforcements for the first time in their conquest history. The chamber erupted in murmurs and exclamations. Some representatives physically changed colors in shock. Others began rapid calculations on their personal devices, trying to make sense of this unprecedented situation. In a quiet corner of the chamber, junior analyst Pip watched the proceedings with growing fascination. As part of the Council's research team, she had been studying the transmissions from Earth. Her antennae twitched as she compiled her findings on her datapad. "High Counselor," Pip found herself speaking before she could stop herself, her voice carrying through the chamber. "May I share something important about the humans?" All eyes, sensory organs, and other various perception apparatuses turned to her. Pip's exoskeleton nearly froze, but she continued, knowing the information was too important to keep quiet. "Our analysis shows that the humans are not acting out of ignorance of the protocol. They understood it perfectly. They simply chose not to follow it." The chamber fell silent. The concept of choosing not to follow the surrender protocol was as alien to them as breathing water would be to a human. "Impossible," declared Representative Vox of the Science Division, his mechanical voice echoing. "The protocol is based on universal constants. No species can choose to ignore it." Pip brought up a holographic display of her own. "The humans have a concept they call options. When faced with the protocol, they didn't see it as an absolute command, but as one choice among many." The display showed various human responses to the Drachnid fleet. Some ships evaded, others broadcast confusing signals, and still others attempted peaceful communication. Each group acted differently while somehow remaining coordinated. High Counselor Xentera's crystals dimmed thoughtfully. How are they maintaining unity without uniformity? It defies all social models. From his seat in the upper tier, Elder Sage Yu of the Historical Archives spoke for the first time. "In my 1,000 years, I have never seen such adaptability. They treat our most sacred protocol as if it were a suggestion." On the main display, live footage showed human ships performing maneuvers that made several representatives feel dizzy. The small Earth vessels moved in patterns that seemed chaotic, but achieved clear objectives. The Drachnid fleet reports that standard containment tactics are ineffective. Xentera announced. The humans use something called creative problem-solving to counter each strategy. Pip's antennae perked up again. "That's another fascinating aspect, High Counselor. The humans don't just adapt. They seem to enjoy the challenge. They're treating this as an opportunity for growth." The chamber's atmosphere shifted from shock to worry. Species that enjoyed challenges were unpredictable. Unpredictable species were dangerous to the galactic order. "We must consider," Elder Sage Yu said slowly, "that our assumptions about civilized behavior may need revision." Representatives began sending urgent messages to their homeworlds. If humans could resist the protocol, what other constants of galactic civilization might they challenge? High Counselor Xentera raised all her crystal segments, calling for attention. "We face an unprecedented situation. For the first time in Council history, we must create new protocols for dealing with a species that—" She paused, searching for the right words, "that makes its own choices." As the Council debated, Pip continued studying the human transmissions. She noticed something that both excited and terrified her. The humans were learning from every interaction, improving their techniques, and sharing information globally. They weren't just resisting. They were getting better at it. The ripples of humanity's defiance were spreading through the galaxy, carrying with them a revolutionary idea. Perhaps the universal constants weren't so universal after all. Dr. Zilla adjusted her environmental suit as she studied the streams of data flowing across her laboratory screens. As the Council's lead researcher on emerging civilizations, she had been tasked with understanding why humans behaved so differently from every other known species. Professor called her assistant Miri, a young luminarian whose bioluminescent patterns showed excitement. You need to see this historical archive we just decoded from their internet. Dr. Zilla floated over to Miri's workstation. Her species had evolved in zero gravity, making the extensive research facility feel like home. What have you found? It's called Wikipedia, Miri explained, her patterns pulsing brighter. It's a knowledge repository that humans build together. Anyone can contribute information. It's chaotic, but somehow it works. Dr. Zilla's tentacles curled in surprise as she absorbed the information. No central authority controls the knowledge. How do they prevent misinformation? They have something called citations and community review, Miri explained. But that's not the most interesting part. Look at their military history. The screens filled with images and text from Earth's past. Dr. Zilla's color changed to pale green as she processed what she was seeing. Unlike other species, humans had developed without the Council's careful guidance. Their history was filled with instances of refusing to surrender, even against overwhelming odds. Fascinating, Dr. Zilla whispered. Computer, define guerrilla warfare. The computer's smooth voice responded. A human military concept where smaller forces use unexpected tactics to overcome larger, more powerful opponents. Often involves hidden bases, surprise actions, and creative problem-solving. That's exactly what they're doing now in space, Miri realized, her patterns forming complex thoughts. They've adapted their historical tactics to space combat. In another part of the research facility, senior analyst Cax was making his own discoveries. His mechanical fingers flew over the holographic keyboard as he compiled his findings for the Council. Dr. Zilla, he called out, his synthetic voice carrying a note of urgency. I found something in their entertainment archives called science fiction. The research team gathered around Cax's station. The screen showed hundreds of human stories about encounters with alien civilizations. Some were peaceful, others weren't, but they all shared one theme. Humans had been imagining and preparing for this moment for generations. They've been mentally preparing for alien contact through storytelling, Dr. Zilla noted, her tentacles moving in complex patterns of thought. While other species waited for Council guidance, humans created countless possible scenarios and solutions. Miri's patterns shifted to show realization. That's why the surrender protocol didn't work. They've imagined so many different ways to respond to alien contact that the standard approach had no special power over them. Dr. Zilla began composing her report to the Council. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just resisted the protocol. They had been unintentionally preparing to resist it for their entire history. Look at this concept, Cax said, bringing up new information. Never say die. A human phrase meaning to never give up, no matter the circumstances. The research team studied more human history, finding terms like resistance, independence, and thinking outside the box. Each discovery helped them understand why humanity responded so differently to the Drachnid fleet. Their entire history is filled with smaller groups succeeding against larger ones, Dr. Zilla noted in her report. Their stories celebrate those who find unexpected solutions. They have sayings like, where there's a will, there's a way, that encourage trying the impossible. Miri's patterns showed concern. Should we be worried? Are they dangerous? Dr. Zilla considered this carefully. They're not dangerous in the way we initially feared. They don't want to harm others. They just want to be free to make their own choices. Their history shows they're willing to defend that freedom, but they also value peace and cooperation. As she finished her report, Dr. Zilla added one final note. Humanity's greatest strength isn't their technology or their tactics. It's their ability to imagine different possibilities and their determination to find a way forward, no matter the odds. Perhaps we, the Council, have something to learn from them. The research team continued their work, each new discovery helping them understand why humans had become the first species to successfully challenge the fundamental rules of galactic civilization. Dr. Marcus Wong sat in the Global Defense Command Center, surrounded by screens showing real-time data from Earth's space fleet. As head of the Adaptive Technology Division, he watched with pride as human ships implemented new strategies based on what they'd learned about the Drachnid fleet. "Look at this," he said to his colleague, Dr. Emily Patel, pointing to a simulation running on one of the screens. 2 weeks ago, we didn't even know how their ships' energy shields worked. Now we're teaching our ships to adjust their flight patterns to use minimal energy against them." Emily nodded, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she updated the global tactical database. "It's amazing how quickly the fleet learns. Every encounter gives us new data, and every ship has access to the latest findings within minutes." On the main screen, they watched as Earth's vessels demonstrated their newest adaptation. Instead of trying to overcome the Drachnid shields with force, the ships now moved in patterns that caused the alien shields to waste energy tracking multiple small targets. Admiral Kovacs's latest transmission to his command shows they're completely confused, Emily said, reading from another screen. "They can't understand how we keep changing our approach." In orbit above Earth, Captain Sarah Chen was implementing these new tactics. Her ship, the Swift Response, led a group of vessels in what looked like a dance through space. They moved in patterns inspired by Earth's smallest but most successful creatures. "Just like how ants work together," Sarah explained to her crew. "Each of us is small, but together we can accomplish amazing things." Back in the command center, a young technician named Raj burst into the room, his tablet displaying new information. "Dr. Wong, you need to see this. We've decoded more of their communication protocols." Marcus and Emily gathered around Raj's tablet. The screen showed an analysis of how the Drachnid ships communicated with each other. Unlike Earth's internet, which could instantly share information between all ships, the alien fleet relied on a rigid hierarchy of command. "This is perfect," Marcus said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "They're so focused on maintaining proper communication channels that they can't adapt quickly enough. Every new tactic has to be approved by their command structure." Emily was already sending this information to the fleet. Thanks to Earth's decentralized command system, every ship captain could immediately use this knowledge to their advantage. The human fleet began adjusting their formations to take advantage of the delays in Drachnid communications. "Look at these readings," Raj pointed out. "Their ships are amazing technologically, but they've never had to use them in actual space combat. Everything they know about warfare is theoretical." In space, the Drachnid fleet was experiencing something entirely new: frustration. Their ships were more advanced, their weapons more powerful, but they couldn't seem to gain any advantage over the smaller, technically inferior human vessels. "Another adaptation is ready for testing," Marcus announced, sending new data to the fleet. "We've found a way to use their own shield frequencies to create sensor shadows. Our ships can hide in the interference patterns created by their own technology." The command center erupted in cheers as they watched the first ships successfully implement this new tactic. The Drachnid fleet sensors couldn't track human vessels that disappeared into these artificial blind spots. "Dr. Wong," Emily called out, reading a new message. "The Council researchers are asking how we're developing new strategies so quickly. They can't believe we're improvisating instead of following established protocols." Marcus smiled as he composed his response. "Tell them that humans have a saying: necessity is the mother of invention. When we need to solve a problem, we keep trying new solutions until we find one that works." As Earth's fleet continued to evolve and adapt, the Drachnid commanders faced an uncomfortable truth. They were fighting an enemy that grew stronger with each encounter. Their perfectly planned invasion had turned into a learning experience, not for them, but for humanity. In the command center, the team continued their work, proving that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons, but their ability to learn, adapt, and grow in the face of any challenge. The Grand Chamber of the Intergalactic Council had never been so chaotic. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the spiral-shaped hall, their voices rising in a mix of concern and excitement. High Counselor Centera's crystals pulsed with stress as she tried to maintain order. "The Drachnid fleet has lost contact with 3 of their supply stations," announced Representative Fox, his mechanical voice cutting through the noise. "The humans have expanded beyond Earth's orbit. They're not just defending, they're pushing back." The chamber's holographic displays showed the current situation. Small human ships had appeared near Drachnid supply routes, not to attack, but to study and learn. Each appearance caused the mighty Drachnid Empire to scramble their forces, wasting enormous amounts of energy and resources. Junior Analyst Pip, recently promoted for her insights into human behavior, stepped forward to present her latest findings. The humans are using something they call psychological advantage. They know the Drachnids must respond to every sighting, so they're making the Empire's size work against it. In another part of space, Admiral Kovacs faced the most difficult moment of his career. His fleet, once proud and orderly, now moved in confused patterns, trying to protect too many locations at once. The humans seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. "Admiral," Commander Zix reported, her scales now permanently pale with stress, "our supply ships request more escorts. The humans aren't attacking them, but they're studying them, learning about them." Kovacs knew what this meant. Every time the humans observed their ships, they learned more about Drachnid technology. Their rapid adaptation had turned their inferior technology into an advantage. They could change and improve quickly, while the Drachnid fleet was bound by thousands of years of unchanging tradition. Back in the council chamber, more troubling news arrived. Representative Molo's gelatinous form rippled with agitation as he shared the latest reports. 3 younger species have formally requested to delay their scheduled surrenders, he announced. They want to study the human approach first. The chamber erupted again. For the first time in council history, species were questioning the surrender protocol. The carefully maintained order of the galaxy was beginning to unravel. High Counselor Centera raised all her crystal segments, demanding attention. "We must face an uncomfortable truth. The humans have not only resisted successfully, they've shown that our most basic assumptions about civilization might be wrong." Dr. Zilla, now the Council's expert on human behavior, floated forward to share her analysis. Humans have a concept called questioning authority. They believe that rules should be challenged and tested, not just accepted. This idea is spreading to other species. The Council's younger members, particularly those from recently integrated worlds, showed great interest in this concept. Their representatives began asking questions that had never been asked before. Why must smaller civilizations always surrender to larger ones? Could there be better ways to welcome new species into the galactic community? What if cooperation was more valuable than conformity? Meanwhile, Earth's influence continued to grow. Their internet now extended into nearby space, sharing information faster than the Council's official channels. Other species began creating their own information-sharing networks, inspired by the human model. "The humans have made no hostile moves against civilian targets," Pip reported, her antennae twitching with excitement. "They're proving that a species can be strong without being aggressive. This challenges everything we thought we knew about power in space." High Counselor Centera received an urgent message from the Drachnid Empire. After countless centuries of successful conquests, they were requesting something unprecedented: help in negotiating with a species that refused to surrender. "We stand at a turning point," Centera announced to the chamber. "For the first time in our history, we must consider that our way might not be the only way. The humans have shown us that adaptation and flexibility can be greater strengths than size and power. As the Council debated their next steps, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. More species were beginning to question the old ways. The age of automatic surrender was ending, replaced by something new and unknown. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of this change was a small blue planet whose inhabitants simply refused to follow the rules. The emergency session of the Intergalactic Council was unlike any other in galactic history. For the first time, a new species had been invited to participate before their official surrender, because they had never surrendered at all. Ambassador Sarah Chen, formerly captain of the Swift Response, stood before the council chamber. She wore a simple blue uniform with the New Earth Space Federation insignia, a handshake superimposed over a star field. On behalf of humanity, she began, her voice clear and confident. I thank the Council for this opportunity to help shape a new future for all species. High Counselor Xentera's crystals glowed with formal recognition. The Council acknowledges Earth's unique position. Never before has a species demonstrated such creativity in response to contact. The chamber's displays showed the newly established human space stations. They weren't military bases, but rather gathering places where different species could meet, share ideas, and learn from each other. The stations had become popular among younger species eager to understand the human way of thinking. Dr. Zilla, now serving as the Council's chief cultural advisor, floated forward to present her final report. The human approach to space exploration has shown us something remarkable. They seek not to conquer or submit, but to connect and grow. In the visitor section, Admiral Kovacs of the Drachnid Empire sat quietly. His scales had regained their normal color after the signing of the Earth-Drachnid Cooperation Treaty. The document was unique. Instead of demanding surrender, it outlined ways for both civilizations to work together and learn from each other. We propose a new classification, Ambassador Chen continued, displaying a hologram of Earth's internet expanding through space. The title Independent Innovation Species for civilizations that choose to develop their own path while maintaining peaceful relations with others. Junior Analyst Pip, who had become Earth's biggest supporter in the Council, displayed the data supporting this proposal. Her antennae danced with excitement as she showed how species sharing information freely developed faster than those following the old hierarchical system. The humans have a saying, Pip added, a rising tide lifts all boats. When we share knowledge and respect each other's independence, everyone benefits. Representative Molo, whose own species had recently adopted some human innovations, bubbled in agreement. The old protocol assumed that bigger meant better. The humans showed us that adaptation and cooperation can be greater strengths. The council chamber's mood was different now. Where once there had been only order and hierarchy, now there was a buzz of excitement about new possibilities. Young representatives from various worlds were already forming discussion groups, sharing ideas about how to blend their traditional ways with new approaches. Therefore, High Counselor Xentera announced, her crystal segments forming the pattern of historical significance, the Council hereby establishes the new protocol for galactic cooperation. The chamber screens displayed the key points. 1. All species have the right to choose their own path of development. 2. Peaceful cooperation is preferred over surrender and domination. 3. Knowledge and resources should be shared for mutual benefit. 4. Different approaches to civilization are to be respected and studied. 5. Innovation and adaptation are recognized as valuable traits. Ambassador Chen smiled as she watched various species representatives discussing the new protocol. Already, the council chamber had changed. Instead of rigid rows of seats arranged by status, members now sat in circular discussion pods where ideas could be shared freely. Humanity thanks the council for their willingness to change, she said. We look forward to exploring the galaxy together as equals. Back on Earth, millions watched the broadcast of the council session. Schools, offices, and homes fell silent as High Counselor Xanterra made the final declaration. Let it be recorded that on this day, the galaxy entered a new era. The age of surrender has ended. The age of cooperation begins. In orbit around Earth, the Swift Response, now a diplomatic vessel, prepared to welcome its first group of alien students eager to learn about human creativity and adaptation. Its mission had changed from defense to education, but its crew's excitement remained the same. As the council session ended, Dr. Zilla added one final note to her research. Perhaps the humans' greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their resistance to surrender, but their proof that change is not something to fear. It is an opportunity to grow. The galaxy had indeed changed forever, not through force or conquest, but through this simple human idea that there's always another way forward, if you're brave enough to look for it.